Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is Tom Stanis, the co founder and CEO at Story Health. Tom, how are you today?
Thanks for having me, Jared. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. It's good to see you again. You and I met at Health, great
Yeah.
conference, a lot of networking, a lot of content. So it was
Yes.
great that we were able to carve some time out to talk.
Great to see everybody in person again. I really got energized coming out of there.
Absolutely. Well, part of us connecting at Health was we're like, hey, we need to do this podcast now that we did a little snippet, right? So
Yeah,
would love if you could tell the audience a little bit about your background and then we'll talk more about Story Health.
sure. My name, again, Tom Stanis. I'm an engineer by background. I'm not a clinician. So I come to the world of healthcare as a novice, learning all the stuff myself. But it really began 10 to 15 years ago when I kind of had my own healthcare issues that made me realize I've been working at Google as a principal engineer on the ads and payment systems there. And when you get confronted with your own healthcare issues, you realize maybe I shouldn't spend my career helping people click on ads and buy apps. So I decided to use my powers for good and try and help with giving people great experiences in healthcare and really refining the process. So I came back to Google and was one of the co-founders at Verily, the big healthcare division at Google. I ran all the software projects there, everything from machine learning for detecting uh, diabetic retinopathy, one of the leading causes of blindness from pictures of retinas, to Onduo, which was my baby at Verily, which is a big diabetes program that's still going strong today. Through all of that, I realized that there's this massive gap between all the great science we were doing at Verily, new technologies, and what was actually happening in clinical care. It was, the road is 20, 30 years long, and in many cases, we still don't use the best science available in clinical care. So I really fell in love with the problem of care delivery. And I started Story Health really to try and address that problem. How do we bridge that gap and bring the latest science to all the patients that need it and deal with all these access and availability issues that get in the way?
Really interesting. And it's been really cool seeing people from, from Google's health division, right, start to branch out and start their own
Mhm.
companies. Um, what can you share about what not just the educational opportunity but the opportunity that Google's healthcare initiatives provide for those that either stay or decide to leave that help you in your latest venture.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us coming from the clinic from the tech world, like like I said, we're novices when it comes to healthcare. We need to, in many ways, we come in with a very maverick approach to things, which, as we've seen several times, like can be tone deaf to the industry. So having the time at Google and being able to work with actually world class clinicians that have come in there, people like Jess Mega and Vivian Lee and Andy Conrad, like that really was a great place for me to build up my understanding of how the industry works and what it means to build a clinical product that is truly validated, that has evidence behind it. Because it's very easy to build things that theoretically work, but to build things that actually work in healthcare when so much is on the line is another story.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, Tom. There's been so much investment into digital health over the years, especially the last 2 to 3 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And something we often don't discuss enough about is we talk about how much money all these companies have raised, and we talk about the unicorns right in the space, but
Mhm.
can we talk a little bit about what's actually happening? So let's dive into the role of clinical evidence in digital health. Like why is that so important? And what are you seeing, and what are some of the things that you're doing at Story Health to address that piece?
Yeah, it's an important point because if you look at a lot of the digital health interventions that have come out in the last 5 years or so, uh, do many of them work? We don't really know, honestly. We think they do. They seem like they should work, and the people that use them tend to have good experiences. But we need to actually prove that against a control of some sort, because there's problems where people that get involved with digital health today tend to be people that are really engaged with their health already. So are you really making a difference, or are you just feeding to the top 1% of people that really care about their healthcare already? So that's been a really important part of the puzzle for me to figure out, is how do we prove it? And medicine's had a long history of this. We've seen drugs and procedures come along, and many of them worked and many of them haven't. In fact, there's great stories about theories that we had about medicine, about ideas that could work. And then when we actually prove them out over a significant population, they tend to have no effect, or maybe they have reverse effects. So lots of great stories about that. One of my favorites is about HDL. So HDL is a kind of good kind of cholesterol we like to talk about. And everyone's like, well, we should build a drug that raises your HDL, and that will make everybody have better heart outcomes. So a great drug was developed, it was tested, and it turns out that just raising the HDL had no effect on true outcomes for patients. It is actually a marker of something else that is related, but not the cause of actually better outcomes. So that's something that I think is really important with a lot of these things, is we need to figure out how do we test that. So that means doing real clinical trials with real controls and real randomization, something you haven't heard about in digital health, right? And that's expensive and time consuming, and something that is important for me when we started Story Health that we actually get involved with early on. So we've been doing that already with our partnership with Duke, where we've actually been have a randomized control trial that's enrolling right now. So I'm very excited about that. It is important also to look for earlier signs of evidence that are also pointing you in the right direction, and we've done that. I'm really proud that we've actually already published some data at HFSA with our partners at ChristianaCare back a few months ago. Starting with evidence, I think, has been a key thing that digital health needs to grow up into.
Why do you think that's been the case though for so long? That you just said that digital health has to kind of grow up into, right? Why has that been such an issue for so long?
Yeah, so it first of all, it takes a lot of time, and one of the things about digital health is that we've seen this need for solutions that's like we need it yesterday, right? So that's the hard part, is like, can you take the time to do it? The second thing I think is that in many cases there's a big crossover between digital health and health IT. So the question is, like, when you install a new web browser, do you need a randomized control trial to tell whether that works? No, that's clearly overkill, right? So uh, a lot of the work that we did in IT was very much focused on just moving data, understanding, getting the data in the right place. That's a place where clinical outcomes are probably way over the line. So there's a blend here, and I think that's the reason that it's been taking a long time to get there. But frankly, like, digital therapeutics is the new area of digital health, and that's why shouldn't we just test things that are going to have changes in all your healthcare outcomes the same way we test medicines and devices as well.
When when I was, continuing to learn more about Story Health and you, and I was on your website, and first thing I see is your tagline:
Mm.
continuous care beyond the specialist clinic. Can we talk about why that ended up being, the tagline, the focus, and what that means, to you and Story Health moving forward?
Yeah. So at Story Health, one of I mentioned our missions is really to bring the best care to every patient. And if you look at why that doesn't happen, uh, why is it that patients actually are undertreated chronically all over the place? A lot of it's because of this clinic-based nature of care that we see, where clinicians, especially specialists, are in such short supply that they only see patients at visits, and those visits can't happen very frequently. Typically, a 3 month waiting time to see a cardiologist. Maybe you'll get an appointment every 3 to 6 months. Uh, and that's just not enough time in order to see and be able to treat somebody who has a significant illness that's really causing problems. So as a specialist, it's really hard to treat patients in that manner. You might see a patient one day, they're feeling fine, and then they end up getting admitted to the ED, going through a hospitalization, coming home, struggling to get on the right drugs, maybe be readmitted, all in time before you actually see them for the next visit, right? So there's a need for a different model, and that's where we came up with the idea of care beyond the clinic. How do you actually help patients with their disease and their condition every day of the year, right? It's not like heart disease takes time off between visits. So like, it's always there with you every day, and we need to treat it that way. And of course, the current tools that we have for specialists don't allow them to do that. They would just be overwhelmed with data if they try to look at patients every day. So we need a platform that enables them to really see how patients are doing in a quick view, but also only have to take action when something really important has come to light, right? You don't want to. All of us would love to have a world class specialist watch us every day if we had a disease, but that's not practical. We need a way to engage them exactly at the right moment when they're needed.
And Tom, before we let you go here, I'd love to hear what's next for Story Health. What's getting you excited as we head into 2023 and beyond?
So there's two different things I'd like to talk about. One is on the business side, is you're starting to see more and more there are business models emerging that allow us to really focus on this kind of care, right? So more and more primary care physicians and other physicians that typically have been involved in care delivery are now actually thinking about the total outcomes and actually, in many ways, taking on financial risk with these patients. And that's exciting to me because this kind of payer provider divide that we've had for so long has caused like all sorts of weird incentives. You've seen people either do too many things to patients or only do things that they actually are incentivized to do and missing out on other things. So that's to me a big thing that's really exciting. The other thing I think that's really exciting is we're starting to see real true data portability. Commonweal and Care Quality are now these networks that are connecting EHRs together, and we're starting to see much easier record sharing. The new ONC rules around FHIR make it really easy to build apps on top of the EHR. So EHR as a platform is becoming a reality, and that to me is really exciting because it allows for a lot more innovation with a lot more different companies. So those two things I think are the two biggest things that I'm most excited about coming into the world of digital health right now.
Well, Tom, I can't wait to already have you on again.
Thank
And
you.
we can go through some other topics, but really appreciate you taking your time here today to hop on the podcast and chat with me. And really looking forward to continuing the conversation moving forward.
Thanks, Jared. Nice to be here. Thanks.